Welcome to the Three Forms Podcast, a joint production of Beaver Dam Christian Reformed Church and Coopersville CRC. Together we are touring our historic three forms of unity, the Belgic Confession, Heidelberg Catechism, and the Canons of Dort, considering how these old and trusted paths can equip and lead God's people in the midst of today's challenges. So let's start this week's episode. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Pastor Lloyd Hemstreet.
And I am Reverend Tyler Wagamaker.
Tyler, we are on episode 312. We've completed the second head of doctrine, and now we're heading into the third and fourth heads of doctrine of the Canons of Dort.
What is that about?
Well, the subtitle that it has here for us is The Corruption of Man, His Conversion to God, and the Manner Thereof. So I think that's what it's going to be about.
Light reading.
Yeah, light reading. Very good. Probably very tangential. Nothing that's actually applicable to our lives, I'm sure, right?
I'm sure it'll be sweetness and light, especially at the very beginning. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Let's get into the sweetness and light of it all.
Let's do that. So Article 1 goes ahead and reads in this way. Man was originally formed after the image of God. His understanding was adorned with a true and saving knowledge of his Creator and of spiritual things. His heart and will were upright, all his affections pure, and the whole man was holy. But, revolting from God by the instigation of the devil and by his own free will, he forfeited these excellent gifts, and in the place thereof became involved in blindness of mind, horrible darkness, vanity, and perverseness of judgment, became wicked, rebellious, and obdurate in heart and will, and impure in all his affections. Okay, not so light and
well, dreamy. Article 1 started out real wonderful.
It did. It's kind of like God created all things good. But they didn't stay that way. That's kind of the issue that we have in Scripture. Run into Genesis 3 or so. I mean, we had 2 chapters of light and beauty.
Sweetness and light.
Yes.
That's right.
And then temptation from the devil. And yeah, we got sin in the world.
Which, by the way, before we even jump into that, it is a curious thing, by the way, Lloyd, because we were Article 1, Head of Doctrine 1, main point of Doctrine 1, Roman numeral 1, and then Roman numeral 2. But all of a sudden now here we have like 3 and 4 crammed together. It's like, did the Synod of Dort not know that there's a space between Roman numeral 3 and Roman numeral 4? Don't they get their own unique kind of Roman numeral subtitles?
Right. What's going on here? Why are 3 and 4 together? That's kind of the first question that we should probably address and consider. We've talked about the 5 points of Calvinism. We've talked about tulip or two-dip. We have put both of those forward.
Ice cream.
And in both of these, the T in both cases stands for total depravity, and the I in both cases stands for irresistible grace. And what we have in the third and fourth head of doctrine is the T and the I are the focus of this idea of total depravity, as well as this reality of irresistible grace. Now,
but why together?
Why together? I'm answering that, Tyler. Give me a second here. So why are they together? Well, the reason we talk about 5 heads of doctrine, or not the 5 points of Calvinism, and there's the third and fourth are together and combined in this way, is because the Remonstrants put forward their 5 different questions, their 5 different challenges, and on one of those 5, the Reformers, the Synod of Dort, said, yeah, you're correct. This is accurate. But the way that plays out is the way that you're saying that plays out is not the same way that we would view it. So I actually have in Cornelius's Pronk, his expository sermons on the Canons of Dort. In there, he actually has written for us what the Remonstrants put forward as their third point of doctrine that the Synod of Dort agreed to, as it is written here. So they put forward, man has not saving grace of himself, nor of the energy of his free will, Inasmuch as he is in a state of apostasy, and sin can of and by himself neither think, will, nor do anything that is truly good, such as saving faith eminently is, but that it is needful that he be born again of God in Christ, through his Holy Spirit, and renewed in understanding, inclination, or will, and all his powers, in order that he may rightly understand, think, will, and effect what is truly good, according to the word of Christ, John 15:5, without me ye can do nothing. And so the
sounds pretty good.
Yeah, Synod said, yeah, you're on the right track here. But as they went into their fourth head that they put forward, the remonstrants put forward, they explained grace in such a way that, wait, did you actually believe what you said about depravity and sin? And that is the question that the Synod of Dort wrestled with and said they're really not living up to what it is they've declared. They're not living up to what they've said about the fall. They're not living up to the John 15:5 that they claimed, without me, you can do nothing, as Jesus had declared.
I don't think you know what this means that you think it means.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Right. I don't think, you're saying you believe in total depravity, and this isn't the first time that it had come forward. Pelagius, back in the, 4th century, 5th century, something like that, wherever he was, 1,000 years before, he had put forward that, people are basically good, and that they're not corrupted by sin or anything like that, and they just are influenced by other and make bad choices in that way, and so they need to be influenced to live into their goodness. And that was rejected by the Christian church. And the Arminians say, okay, yeah, we don't want to be Pelagians. We don't want to put this forward. And so we are in agreement on this reality of sin. But yet they still, as we've seen throughout this canons, want to put forward, but our will is what's critical here, and we have to have the will to do what is good. Well, then you don't actually understand the effects and the ramifications of sin.
And it's like they say, and they believe in the fall, but it's like a tripping kind of a fall. Yeah. Like you're walking along the sidewalk and you trip a bit and you stumble, but then you kind of, it's like, it's not a tripping. This is a huge fall. This is fall with a capital F. Mm-hmm. The fall into sin. We just, in fact, a lot of times in literature, it's just the fall.
Right.
And with a capital F, and that's right. What it is. It's a standalone thing because it's a significant thing. It's not a tripping kind of a thing. Reminds me of when I was growing up, we used to watch, it's not there anymore. I think you can find old reruns some places, but Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. Oh, yeah. And so, Roadrunner is running and the coyote's trying to chase him, and Roadrunner goes off a cliff, runs off a cliff, and Coyote runs off a cliff. But the Roadrunner is just kind of floating in air. Gravity doesn't impact the Roadrunner, right. Even though, but then Wile E. Coyote, he gets the gravity and he falls, multiple stories, splat on the ground.
Right.
The Calvinists are like, the Reformed people are like, it's Wile E. Coyote.
Yes.
That's what happened. The Arminians are almost a little bit like the Roadrunner in the way they're approaching things. Like, yeah, we say that if you fall off, you go off, you're going to fall, but it's almost kind of like they're floating.
Right.
And the way it plays out.
Yeah. Another theologian had the example of falling off of a ladder, and you fall off of a step ladder, 4 or 5 feet up, you could possibly break a leg or two if you fall a distance like that, unexpectedly, certainly. But if you fall off of a huge extension ladder 60 feet off onto concrete or something like that, it's going to be a lot more damage than just a couple of legs, most likely. And so this is, once again, categorizing how serious of a fall was it. First off, we agree that Adam was created good, that he was holy, that he was righteous, that he was created in such a way that he could walk with his God, and that he had the will to choose that which is good, because that was the way that God created him, upright and good in every way.
It reminds me, as you mentioned about falling off a ladder of these. Once in a while, you can get on these YouTube commercials from around the world. Some funny ones. There was a Dutch one I saw a number of years ago, and it was this guy went into this Japanese acupuncturist kind of office or something like that. It was in language I couldn't understand, but you didn't have to understand the language because the scene was just absolutely hilarious. So this guy, this Dutch guy's getting all these needles all put in him all over the place to deal with, and then by this acupuncturist, and all of a sudden there's smoke that appears underneath the door, of this office building, and this Japanese acupuncturist opens it up and he's like, fire! And he's grabbing all of his stuff from the office, and then he just does a flying leap and he goes out the window down below and to escape. And then so this acupuncturist, or this guy with all the needles in him, is like, uh-oh. And then he looks out the window and he's thinking, this is probably, maybe one story. But no, it's 12 stories up. And then down below are the firemen with the old-fashioned kind of trampoline that you can jump into for safety.
Right.
So he's looking, there's fire behind him, but he's covered in needles. And so if he falls off, jumps out of there to his safety, he will also impale himself with that. And then it kind of stops, and then it looks at his face like, uh-oh, I'm in a conundrum.
Right.
We're in that. It's we're covered with needles, and there's just no good way. We are not. This is a really far jump down, and this is a really big fall. This is a really bad situation that we are in. There is no winning for us.
Right.
In the current state, but that's why we need God in a supernatural way to come and enter into our world.
Right.
Because in the natural state of things, there is no winning. There is no good way out.
What this is heading towards in this head of doctrine is how much grace do we actually need? How much do we need God's intervention to restore us from this fall that we have taken as humanity?
Adam took a face plant after falling 12 stories up.
Yep.
Kind of like the coyote, kind of boom. This is not a tripping.
Right.
This is a full-on face plant on there. And you get to a place like Romans chapter 3, which is one of those places that, you talked about go first back to Genesis chapter 1 and 2, and you see things beautiful and perfect.
Right.
That didn't last.
Right.
And then you get to Genesis 3. God doesn't even spend much time in Genesis 1 and 2. He just okay, this is the problem.
Right.
On there, Genesis chapter 3, and then you get something like Romans chapter 3, which again talks about how no one is righteous.
Right. Does that really tie in with Article 2 here?
We're kind of it's a little bit more Article 2.
Okay.
Should
we go ahead and read that then? So.
Sure.
Right.
Let's move in.
Let's continue moving on.
We'll see how bad things are.
Right. So was it just Adam that got screwed up by this fall? And Article 2 says, man after the fall begot children in his own likeness. A corrupt stock produced a corrupt offspring. Hence all the posterity of Adam, Christ only excepted, have derived corruption from their original parent. Not by imitation, as the Pelagians of old asserted, but by the propagation of a vicious nature in consequence of the just judgment of God. All right, so was it just Adam that fell? No, it is all of his descendants as well, we see. And so Romans 3, how does it go ahead and describe all those descendants?
It's not good.
No.
What shall we conclude then? Starting with verse 9. Are we any better? Not at all, Paul writes. We have already made the charge that Jews and Gentiles alike are all under sin. As it is written there, and here we go. This is boom.
Yeah.
There is no one righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands, no one who seeks God. All have turned away. They have become together worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one. Their throats are open graves. Their tongues practice deceit. The poison of vipers is on their lips. Their mouths are full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Ruin and misery mark their ways, and the way of peace they do not know. There is no fear of God before their eyes. It's wow.
Right.
It's devastating.
Yes.
Just absolutely devastating. Again, no one who seeks God. So, as opposed to in many ways the Arminians who say, well, maybe you can seek God. Again, God's
right. Well, even in what they put forward, they had to submit to Romans 3 on some extent. They said, yeah, humanity's broken, and it's just a question of how complete is that brokenness. How deeply has this sin affected us? What all has it taken away? We were created in the image and likeness of God, and in the fall, both were lost, the image and likeness of God. We do not hold either of those completely anymore. There's remnants of that beauty with what we were once created. We're not total depravity doesn't mean that someone is as totally evil, totally bad in every way as they possibly could be. What the totality there refers to is that every area of us has been corrupted. There's no part of us that is still good or neutral even, but rather we are in every way turned away from that which is good and holy.
Yes, and to the point where we're dead.
Right, corrupted and dead.
Ephesians 2, Paul says, verse 1, as for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins. I mean, that's how it starts out, deadness, and we've covered that verse before, but that is a really important verse in terms of diagnosing the problem.
Right.
The severity of the problem, not just to say it, but not realize the implications of it. And again, that's where the Arminians fall short, is they don't really understand. They say they understand, but it's like dead men tell no tales.
Right.
Kind of like how often do we come across roadkill alongside the road and that stuff's not moving? It's not getting up. It's not moving. It's dead. I mean, there might be movement on it, but that's only because the wind is blowing the fur. That animal is not moving. Right. Or there might be some movement, but it's the maggots in it. So not in this cold summer or not cold weather right now, but in the heat of summer.
Right.
There's movement. Right. But it's not of its own. It's not its thing. So that's the problem, is the deadness of it, and how it's not just an Adam thing, it's in all of us.
Right.
So, which is Article 2 brings that out.
All his posterity all suffer from this same problem. Reading through the Old Testament, we see that reality over and over again. Even the heroes of the faith that are put forward, they are still struggling with and falling into temptation and sin over and over again. And so none of us is holy. None of us is righteous. None of us can save and redeem ourselves. All of us are guilty of this, as Article 2 said, except for Jesus Christ.
So there's a lot in Romans that deals with a problem of sin, where Paul just masterfully brings it out, but through the Holy Spirit brings it out using his servant Paul.
Right.
And so verse 12 of Romans 5, therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, that's referring to Adam,
the fall,
and death through sin, and in this way death came to all men because all sin. So now, so this is exactly what Article 2 is bringing up. The spread of the corruption is there. Now, some people, of course, they will object to that and say, well, I didn't vote for Adam. It's like, well, why is he my federal head? Why is he my representative on there? We're good Americans. We we have representative government here, and we vote. No taxation without representation, after all, Lloyd. So I didn't get my vote on Adam on there, because that kind of in pride, it's like, well, if I would choose someone different then, obviously, or I wouldn't have done that. I like how R.C. Sproul, he just took this head on, the late R.C. Sproul. I don't know if we have, can I read a quote from him? Read it. Yeah. So he kind of deals with this wonderfully masterfully. He says, suppose we would have had the total freedom to vote for our representative in Eden. Would that have satisfied us? And why do we want the right to vote for our representative? Why do we object if the king or any other sovereign wants to appoint our representatives for us? The answer is obvious. We want to be sure that our will is being carried out. If the king appoints my representative, then I will have little confidence that my wishes will be accomplished. I would fear that the appointed representative would be more eager to carry out the wishes of the king than my wishes. I would not feel fairly represented. But even if we have the right to choose our own representatives, we have no guarantee that our wishes will be carried out. Who among us has not been enticed by politicians who promise one thing during an election campaign and do another thing after they're elected?
Never see that before.
No. Again, Sproul goes on, the reason we want to select our own representative is so that we can be sure that we are accurately represented. At no time in all of human history have we been more accurately represented than in the Garden of Eden. Yeah. Sproul writes, to be sure, we did not choose our representative there. Our representative was chosen for us. The one who chose our representative, however, was not King George. It was Almighty God. When God chooses our representative, he does so perfectly. His choice is an infallible choice. When I choose my own representatives, I do so fallibly. Sometimes I select the wrong person and then am inaccurately represented. Adam represented me infallibly, not because he was infallible, but because God is infallible. Given God's infallibility, I can never argue that Adam was a poor choice to represent me. The assumption many of us make, he finishes out, when we struggle with the fall is that had we been there, we would have made a different choice. We would not have made a decision that would plunge the world into ruin. Such an assumption is just not possible given the character of God. God doesn't make mistakes. His choice of my representative is greater than my choice of my own. I thought, wow. I miss Sproul. God's servant in that way. But his words, the wisdom of that still continues on. And
It does. And I mean, what he puts forward there is just so masterful. How many times have we heard this objection before of, well, I didn't get to choose. But yet, even as we make that specific objection, we're seeking to do our own will, which was the exact thing that Adam fell into instead of obeying God's will.
The irony
Even when we're arguing for it, we ourselves are joining with Adam in making that same exact sin and fall. And so I think this ties right into where we're going here in Article 3.
Oh, wait, no, we still got more. Can I say a little bit? We still got more in Article 2 here, Lloyd.
We got to get to 3 here, but okay, one more thing.
Well, because in some ways because Arminians, what do Arminians say? This is kind of the implications of it, is they say, well, the slate's wiped clean in many ways. That's what Jesus did. Kind of put us all on the same level playing field. And, but back to Romans chapter 5, verse 12 we read, therefore just as sin entered the world through one man and death through sin, and in this way death came to all men because all sin. And it goes on, for before the law was given, sin was in the world, but sin is not taken into account when there is no law. Nevertheless, death reigned from the time of Adam to the time of Moses, even over those who did not sin by breaking a command, as did Adam, who was a pattern of the one to come. In many ways, to say what is the problem? Arminians will a lot of times say, well, you know what, I don't get into problems until I break God's law. And so that's when I get into problems. But what do you do with those who lived before the law was even given? There were thousands of years of humanity, of human existence, where God didn't give a formal law. The Ten Commandments didn't come about until the time of Moses, and in any kind of really stated, kind of written kind of way in that way. But for thousands of years before the law was given, there was death. Why? Where did death come from?
Sin.
Sin had so corrupted nature, had been part of nature, that this was inherent in it. So even if I never had the law, I would still be a sinner. And in many ways, that's what Arminians don't really grapple with. The depth of the depravity,
right,
of the how deeply sin has impacted, the defect of sin. I'm colorblind, but it's like part of my DNA. It's even more part of my DNA, the defect of sin, than my color blindness in many ways. There's no such thing as an innocent baby. And then there's no such thing as being innocent apart from the law.
Right.
Because I'm still guilty.
You are.
Because of the sin problem.
You are.
Which then brings us to Article 3.
Okay, finally, we're getting there.
Yes.
All right. Article 3. Therefore, all men are conceived in sin and are by nature children of wrath, incapable of saving good, prone to evil, dead in sin, and in bondage thereto. And without the regenerating grace of the Holy Spirit, they are neither able nor willing to return to God, to reform the depravity of their nature, or to dispose themselves to reformation. Kind of how we could summarize these 3 articles before us is Article 1, Adam was good, but Adam fell completely. Article 2, all of his children participated in that fall and are dead as their head Adam was. And Article 3 is, it's not just those in the Old Testament, but all of us. We too are dead in these sins, just as Adam was.
Sin is a horrible poison, and it has impacted all of us. It's infected all of us. The entropy is the name of the game in our universe, in our world, decay and death. So that's why we get lawns with weeds in it constantly. If you let it go over time, that's what happens. Or if you don't keep up your house over time, it needs repairs, it needs new paint, and same thing with ourselves. Just inability, the wreckedness of sin, inclined towards all evil. I mean, it even uses that language there.
Yeah. Continuing in Romans, we could go to Romans 8 too, which contrasts life in the spirit versus this sin, flesh, and death. Romans 8, beginning at verses 6 through 8. For to set the mind on the flesh is death, but to set the mind on the spirit is life and peace. For the mind that is set on the flesh is hostile to God, for it does not submit to God's law. Indeed, it cannot.
It cannot.
It cannot do so. Those who are in the flesh cannot please God. Living on our own, living in this condition that we all inherited, this fallen, sinful, totally depraved, every area of us corrupted by sin, there is no way for us to please. There's no way for us to reach out and choose God on our own to bring about the salvation, the life in the spirit, which Romans 8 is talking about that we so desperately need.
Even before Romans 8, Romans chapter 7, verse 14, Paul writes, we know that the law is spiritual, but I am unspiritual, sold as a slave to sin. So he talks about, even uses this concept of slavery to sin, that by nature, that's where we're at. And in fact, he keeps on going there about the problem of his sinful nature. Even though he's saved, even someone who's saved and is new in Jesus Christ, still in this world, we still struggle with sin.
Right.
Until our dying day, it's that insidious on there. So, he's bewildered almost. Verse 15, he says, I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. So Paul's almost even kind of bewildered. But when we do that too, we're almost bewildered. Like, did I just say that? Did I just do that? Yeah, I did. Why? Because I have a sin nature.
I'm still battling. I'm still wrestling with that sin nature.
Yes.
Even though I've now received God's grace and spirit and life, there's still that old man that is so dead and destructive that remains within us. And what the Arminians are trying to trying to put forward and propose is that, though we're all this way dead, we still have the power to choose. And that's where head of Doctrine 4 is irresistible grace. No, you're all the way dead. It's going to have to be God to save and redeem you.
It is. Even again, verse 17, Paul writes, as it is no longer I myself who do it, but it is sin living in me. Mm-hmm. So it's ever present there, this sin nature. And then he goes on, verse 18 through verse 20, I know that nothing good lives in me, that is in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For what I do is not the good I want to do. No, the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. No, if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it is sin living in me that does it. So this sin nature is still very, very prevalent. And even in God's people, and this is a Christian speaking, I mean, this is someone who's been redeemed. So just think about, apart from the redeeming grace of God, you got no chance on there. And that's the problem of sin and where things lie. So it's, I think about it as like a horrible poison. If you go to kids, I illustrate this to kids once in a while, take a glass of water, perfectly good water, Beaver Dam water.
Okay.
Beaver Dam well water. Yeah, it's amazing water. It's so good for you. It's delicious. But if you do one drop of food coloring, red food coloring, or you say, this is one, pretend that this food coloring is really a deadly poison, and I just drop it in this water. Who of you, I said, just one drop, who of you would drink this? And they could see the red, and it's, it changes color of it a little bit. And they'd be like, no. I'd be like, it's just one little drop. And you're like, no, because death is now in there.
Right.
And that's us. I mean, we still look alive. That's how it's deceiving a little bit.
Right. It still feels like water.
It
Even
does.
with that poison in there, it still has some of the appearances of water, but we recognize it's death.
Well,
it's corrupted.
Article 3 talks about we have a distorted nature. For instance, distortion. You can still make out the basic contours of it.
Right.
Growing up we had this old black and white television. We'd travel for work site, help out our dad when we were younger, and there was I Love Lucy came on there, but boy, there was so much distortion in there, so many lines constantly, and then the sound wasn't always that great, but it was just enough we could make out what that episode was about with I Love Lucy and Desi.
What was communicating.
Yep. So I get an idea of what that was, but there was so much that was distorted in there, and our natures are, the Bible describes in a lot of different ways. Death, distortion, it impacts us to the core of who we are.
Right.
And so I'm not
in every area of who we are.
In every area of who we are.
Not one part of us that is still good and pure and seeking that which is right. It has all been turned away from God. All right, Tyler, I think that is where we'll go ahead and conclude for this week.
Not much sweetness and light there.
It started really good.
Yes.
Which even for us would be good, but it ends up disappointing as always. So anyway, we'll try again next week, Tyler. Thanks for joining us on the Three Forms Podcast, a joint ministry of Beaver Dam Christian Reformed Church and Coopersville CRC. To contact us, feel free to reach out through our Facebook page, Substack, on YouTube, or email us directly at threeformspodcast@gmail.com. Three Forms Podcast, walking the good and trusted old paths together.